Hello, everybody on YouTube. It's 7 p.m. here in the UK, state-controlled Britain, where we've got two-tier justice, and you're more likely to go into prison for a tweet than you are for doing a proper crime. But anyway, enough of that. We've got the wonderful UK's top nutritionist with us, Richard Smith. Hi, Richard.
Good day. How are we doing, Stephen?
I'm very well. I don't think your mic is switched on. I think you sound a bit echoey, actually.
Let's see if I'm connected to the correct mic.
Let's check that. While you're doing that, I'm going to say thank you, Deb, for the $1.99 and saying happy birthday. That's really good. Yes, 61 years young I am today, and
is it your birthday?
It is my birthday. Thank you.
61 years young. Incredible. Yes. Looking good. Must be this strange diet that you're on.
Yes, I think that's what it is. Oh, we've got a 1999. Oh, happy birthday from Andrea. That's very kind of you, Andrea. I can't seem to put that on the screen for some reason, but I will do that. That's very kind. That'll go towards another sirloin steak or a ribeye or something like that. Something original. How was your weekend last weekend?
All good. Well, the two of us were away, weren't we? You were in the States at Meatstock, and I was attending Alan Reeves' Ultimate Men's Health Retreat in Marbella in Spain. Yeah, fantastic. It hell of an experience. I had the opportunity to go last year. I couldn't attend that because it was my daughter's 10th birthday. I don't think I ever would have lived that down. So Alan fortunately invited me to this year. Absolutely incredible. Some incredible speakers there. Dorian Yates was there to teach the guys a little bit about training. Mike Corsis, who's a TRT specialist, was there talking to the guys about TRT treatment and therapy. I was there. I give 4 presentations on different aspects of health and well-being, epigenetics, and a few other things. Cholesterol we also covered. Yeah, it was fantastic. Absolutely incredible. And I cannot wait for the next one. So Al better get his butt into gear and organize the next one.
Yeah, you're looking very fit, I must say. So obviously it did you well. You look rested. You look less stressed.
Which is good. So? I don't feel it.
Did you do four presentations while you were there or something?
4 presentations. It was, at least 4 actually. I think, at least 4. I lose
Brilliant.
count.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll share those in the school group or something. The feral grandmother, thank you very much, or grandma, sorry, is $10. Happy birthday to my sister Laurie. Okay, that's excellent. Deb was at Meatstock apparently, which is interesting. I'm glad you loved it. There were some really good people there. Cruz, who was a big supporter, happy birthday, $5. This is really good. I wish I had a birthday every week. So that's interesting from Andrew. Tom Cruise is a year older, 62, and credits a meat heavy diet for his health and athleticism. That's really good. Yes. Thank you for that, Andrew. That's really good. We've got some questions going. Of course, I just want to say next weekend is the public health collaboration. So if you're in the UK or you fancy traveling to the UK, then the 31st of May, which is a Saturday, and the 1st of June, which is a Sunday, you could get to the public health collaboration. There is a link in my description if you want to do that.
I am popping the link into the chat as well.
Brilliant. The schedule is amazing. It's really, really so good. Dr. Eric Westman, your friend, is kicking off the Saturday. And then we've got David Unwin, Dr. David Unwin, talking about GLP drugs, GLP-1. And we've also got Jen Unwin in the afternoon, talking about food addiction. It's all people we know. And then there's a panel as well with Eric Westman, David Unwin, Jen Unwin, Ellen Bennett, Mark Cucuzella, I think that name is, and it's chaired by Graham Phillips. And then we've got so many good things happening, on the Sunday as well. I mean, Sunday, you got Professor Thomas Seyfried talking about cancer, which would be just great. You'll be able to ask a lot of questions. Isabella Cooper as well, talk about long-term ketosis and cancer. And the panel, obviously, which is chaired by Anthony Chafee, You've got, if you could, it's just, there's so many people. Dave Feldman's there as well. I'm just scratching the surface. But anyway, if you can get to the PHC, I'll be there on Saturday and Sunday, but I'm not speaking. I'm just as an attendant, just watching, because it's good to support these things. And Richard, you may go, I understand, but you're not sure yet, are you?
Yeah, I'm hoping to make that. So if I've popped a link in the comments, if you guys are available to attend, then fantastic event. You and I have been for the last couple of years, and it's never disappointed. So yeah, take a look at that. I've put the link into the comments. I will also pop it into the description on my YouTube channel. It's already in Stephen's, but incredible event. So if you are available, come up and show your support.
Yeah, we might talk about that a little bit later as well. I'm currently trying out some new hearing aids as well. So here we go. John Gorman question, which is great. Thank you for putting the QQQ in front. He's 61, 6 months keto, 18 months carnivore. Ketones average 2.6, lowest ketones are 1.2 after exercise or in the morning. Perhaps is constant ketones a problem for your health, as some people say? I think, some people say what they're actually referring to is ketoacidosis, which is not what we're talking about here. I mean, ketoacidosis is high levels of ketones, sort of above 10, to be honest. That's also in concert with high blood glucose. When you have those high levels of ketones in this way of eating, I did an experiment. I went public with it to show that you can have, your blood glucose at 4.5 millimoles per liter, but you can also have your ketones around that as well. Mine pretty much, John, that sort of is my story. I think I have slightly higher levels of ketones, but not that much. No, so I don't think it's a problem, but I'm sure Richard has a lot more to say.
Yeah, fantastic question. Look, it's what is evolutionary appropriate? If we live an evolutionary appropriate diet, we're consuming animal proteins. Animal proteins contain amino acids, particularly leucine. Leucine will elicit an insulin response and therefore lower your ketones. So by default, even if we are avoiding carbohydrate and seed oils, when we eat, when we work out, when we wake, our ketones are going to be lower and blood glucose is going to increase slightly. When we consume food, this activates malonyl coenzyme A, which blocks the carnitine shuttle, therefore preventing the ability to create ketones, essentially, because it prevents the body's ability to use fats for fuel in the short term. So this is a natural process. It's nothing to be concerned with. And as Stephen mentioned, ketoacidosis is the uncontrollable rise of ketones and glucose at the same time. This is very, very uncommon. And in fact, it won't happen in anyone unless they suffer with type 1 diabetes. This will only occur in someone with poor insulin management in a type 1 diabetic state. Even someone who is type 2, who has the ability to create the smallest amounts of insulin, will prevent ketoacidosis. So look, if we look at being technically in a ketogenic state, I've been in a ketogenic state non-stop for many, many years. My ketone levels will rise and they will fall depending on whether I'm training, whether I'm eating lots of animal proteins, and so on and so forth. But my body's always creating ketones. So, I've, other than the elicitation of, insulin and the activation of mTOR, which is also very important, I've been ketogenic for many, many years. My journey has been well over a decade, probably 12 years in the making, 5 or 6 of which have been carnivore. I don't believe living this way long-term is detrimental. And in fact, I attest most of my health and well-being, athletic performance, and my reversal of severe illness, I put that down to my diet. It's allowed me to achieve incredible things. So it's not something I'm concerned with. I have a podcast later this week, as it happens, with James, Dr. James, in regards to potential downsides of long-term low carb lifestyles. But in fact, James himself, you guys may have seen a post, that I did recently. It was a rebuttal against one of the things that he posted in regards to long-term low carb diets being detrimental. And I probably jumped the gun a little bit with this because James is actually an incredibly nice guy. I agree with much of what he says. And by his own admission, he's around 80-85% carnivore or animal-based. And I think there's lots of common ground between, what we believe and the things that he teaches. And I think that hopefully we can solidify some of those common grounds over maybe a series of recordings. And we can explore some of the things that he's concerned with in regards to long-term low carb lifestyles. I don't experience those myself, and Steve, I'm sure it's the same with you. The longer I live the lifestyle, the stricter I am, the healthier and fitter I seem to become. My bloods do change, and this is something I think is very important, but bloods, I think, work differently when you eat differently. So maybe the ranges that we see to be optimal and not optimal for us on a low carb lifestyle. But it's interesting stuff. But John, I'm not concerned with technically living a ketogenic lifestyle long term. In fact, I would argue the opposite, that is incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Richard. And I tell you, it's quite funny. I actually missed doing this last week. Did you?
Yeah. It's, I was in Spain. You were in the States, and I did toy with the idea of just jumping on a call off the cuff, but it's I've missed it.
Yeah, it is. Right. Run and Gun has said, I have been on doxycycline for late onset acne since starting the carnivore way of life. I stopped taking the antibiotics, while my acne has come back again. Well, the thing is, that doesn't cure. That is an oral antibiotic. It doesn't actually cure your acne. It manages the symptoms. That's the problem. And maybe, when we were talking about the things of the PHC, we were talking about, I think it's Dr. David Unwin talking about GLP-1, the, agonists like the Ozempic and Wegovy and the weight loss drugs. See, that's a problem with a lot of medications. Once you start them, yes, they can manage your symptoms. You may get some side effects, but also when you stop them, it hasn't cured anything. It hasn't got to the root cause. It's managed the symptoms. So, for instance, this is why I was plugging the PHC, because that's a big topic, and Dr. David Unwin is a fantastic person to listen to. And I think the same here with you, Run and Gun. You've taken this thing which has managed it. But as soon as you've stopped, your acne has come back again. So I think that's one of the things about these medications. You think they're working, but they're not getting to the root cause. And I think that's one of the things this way of eating will help you with going forward, because you're looking at building better skin. Simple as that, because there's better nutrition, there's better essential fats going into your body than, say, the standard American diet or on, vegan or vegetarian. So I think it is a long haul, though. I mean, the biggest organ of the body is the skin. And we have so many success stories where, really quite bad skin problems have reversed, acne being one. I think, it is a case of being quite patient, which is a horrible thing to say, because, if you present and you don't like how you look, I mean, that's quite difficult to manage. So I'm not belittling it, but I just think all the things you can do, proper hydration, that's not drinking loads and loads of water, that's drinking appropriately, so your urine is sort of straw colored. Manage your stress, make sure that you have a lot of omega-3s, cut down on the omega-6s, so like fatty fish is a really good thing to do. And I think things like tallow soap, I only use tallow soap, that's it, that's all I use. I don't use any other products. I don't use anything on my hair. That is kept in place with water and salt, which is just putting a little spray, and that's it. So that's my hairspray. And I think that's the thing, but you've got to give yourself time. That's the bottom line for me. What about you, Richard? Because you had skin problems, didn't you?
Yeah, severe, and acne was one of them, believe it or not. It's, look, what I'd bounce back to Run and Gun is how long have you been carnivore? I mentioned last time we were live that it takes a long time to heal and repair the body. Many of the conditions that we see in the skin come from intestinal permeability. So healthy skin begins from within. If we have intestinal permeability, which in simple terms means holes in the gut, then this can lead to skin conditions such as acne, other skin conditions which I used to suffer with, eczema and dry skin, all over my hands. My hands are perfect. You know, there's no dry skin there at all anymore. I still use tallow compounds, and sometimes even, and this will make you laugh, this is beef dripping from Treeway Farm, which was a sample that that they gave to us for the Carnival Conference last year. I put this on my hands. I put it on my lips. Yeah, it's beef dripping, and I literally just rub it into my hands. And I also use tallow from Tallow Glow, which is fantastic. But I don't need it any longer. The dry skin has gone away, but it took a long time. I used to suffer with acne all over my face, boils even. They'd become incredibly painful all over my back. Many of the benefits that I saw occurred within 12 months, which was the 107-pound fat loss, the reversal of insulin resistance, and so on and so forth. But as I showed maybe 2 weeks ago, a clip from me on my first video, which was probably still 9 years maybe into my journey, I was still suffering with inflammation, and you can see it in my face on that video. My point is that I was still healing that long into this. So intestinal permeability is the first protocol. We need to heal that. If you are living carnivore, other contributing compounds which may be causing intestinal permeability: medication, alcohol, casein, particularly from dairy, even raw milk or raw dairy still contains casein, which can be a contributing factor. So these are things to be mindful of. Eggs in some people can be problematic, but they tend to be less problematic in most people. So there are a number of things. The first protocol is to make sure that you are healing the gut. And personally, I think if you're already carnivore, which should be achieved via incremental changes, I would recommend going super strict Lion, which is just grass-fed beef and lamb. Avoid anything else for now to make sure you heal the gut. That's going to give you the biggest chance in order to reverse any signs of acne. The other contributing factor is increased cortisol or damage to the HPA axis. Cortisol is responsible for the production of sebum in the skin, which can lead to, it's the oily substance in the skin, which can lead to acne and other skin conditions. So I would recommend a cortisol test. I personally use MediChex if you're based in the UK. It's a saliva cortisol test. You pop a sponge in your mouth for maybe 2 minutes. You saturate it with saliva, pop it into a test tube. You do that at 8 a.m., 12 midday, 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. Send it back, and they will send you what's called your diurnal rhythm, which is how your cortisol is released throughout the day. If that is any time out of whack, then you may have damage to the pituitary, the hypothalamus pituitary axis. And this is what you need to address in order to heal that. But as Stephen says, drugs just treat a symptom. They don't address the root cause. So this is key, finding the root cause. So I would suggest as two of those main ports are called: repair the gut, heal that intestinal permeability. And if it's not that, then test for cortisol imbalance.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's good. Jason has donated £10 on the super chat, which is really good. Hi guys, keto for 1 year. I wore a continual blood glucose monitor and found that my morning glucose was around 4 millimoles per litre, and throughout the day I'd sit around 5.5, 6.5. Would you say that is high?
I wouldn't. No.
What do you want to say, Richard? Sorry, go on.
No, look, you and I do this regularly. We like data. We wear CGMs for the purpose of data, and you found research in regards to low carb ketogenic carnivore lifestyles in regards to passive diffusion, which basically means that the blood glucose may be higher in people who are living low carb ketogenic carnivore lifestyles for a prolonged period of time, because the cells will utilize glucose via different transporters, and it doesn't need the elicitation and action of insulin to drive it through the GLUT4 transporter. I generally sit around 5.5, give or take, whenever I'm testing. I have no issues with creating glucose, as I showed when I ran the half marathon in Chester a few months ago. No problems recovering from that. And that was the interesting thing, that my body makes glucose on demand. So gluconeogenesis, which is incredibly and crucially important, especially when we live a carnivore lifestyle. But I don't think it's high. I don't think it's high at all.
No, I don't think it's high. And it would be handy to have your ketones as well, because that shows you if you're fat adapted or are using fats. I mean, that's I did do a video, and there's one coming out with Bart K today on my birthday, where we talked about this. We talked about the fact that you can have alleged high levels of glucose. So just for the Americans watching and other people that speak in milligrams per deciliter, 4 millimoles is 72, and 5.5 is 99. And 6.5 is 117. And what's the difference in actual blood sugar? Let's talk about sugar in teaspoons between 5.5 and 6.5. That's about 1/20th of a teaspoon of sugar in 5 liters of blood. You know, it's not a big difference. And yeah, I wouldn't say that's high at all, to be honest. So check out that one with Bart, by the way, which I think you will enjoy if you find it. Right, now then, let's get to the next question. So I'm going to go over to this button here. Right, let's have a look. Yeah, this is from Golfing Miracles. Do happen. Golfing miracles do happen. Why did the golfer wear 2 pairs of trousers? In case he got a hole in one. Right, now, hi guys. Oh, but by the way, good golfing miracles do happen. You've said you put a super chat, but it hasn't appeared on here. That's YouTube for you. Don't worry. I'm sure it will appear. If you've made one, it will appear at some point. Hi guys. Is it good to get rid of parasites in the body with the use of ivermectin? If so, where can you get it? Well, ivermectin, of course, you know, is a Nobel Prize winning invention, isn't it? And very good for getting rid of parasites. I think if you're in the UK, you could visit your GP or a private doctor, get you a prescription. I think now people have woken up to the fact it's been around for a long time, and it's literally, you know, been used 1 billion times in humans. It's probably, you know, probably easy to get now, and you can get it only as a prescription in the States, by the way. So you do have to speak to a healthcare provider. But as whether it's a good idea, we're not doctors. This is not medical advice. We're giving you information, and the information about that drug is it seems to be very effective and safe. That's what it seems to be. It wasn't popular a little while ago, but that wasn't because of the mechanisms. It was for some other reason, which we can't go into because it gets us banned. Did you want to add anything, Richard?
Yeah, I'll keep this as tight as I can, as you say, not to get us banned. But it was a very successful drug in combating certain things that were around a few years ago. This is why it wasn't available. So it's been around a long time. It's super effective. What I would say is, what makes you think that you have parasites? You know, have you been tested? You can do a eosinophil test, which will tell you if you have increased risk of parasitic infection. So I'd recommend doing that first and foremost. There are lots of drugs that can get rid of parasites, but I mean, test first just to be sure. What I would suggest is, if you are living a low carb ketogenic carnivore based lifestyle, then this seems to help combat many of the issues that customers and clients come to see me with. But in regards to ivermectin, yeah, I think it's fantastic for a number of reasons. Yeah, it's maybe this is something we can cover in the school group after this at 8 p.m. because it's a hot topic that is and will get us banned if we continue to talk about the benefits of said product.
Yeah. My heart's going as you're talking. It's like, oh no. Right. Which is sad, isn't it? You can't have an honest conversation. If people are wondering what's up with my voice, if you can notice anything, I am a Liverpool supporter. We did win the Premier League and we played today and played awful. So I'm one of those sad people that shouts at the screen when he's a little bit frustrated and also when he's happy. Yeah. The other thing is, just to talk about meat stock, just very briefly, or America, or where I went to, because you can't generalize. I found getting good spring water, which we call mineral water here, which is literally water that comes out of a spring, you know, out of the ground and then gets bottled without any processing. I found that very difficult to get. And all I could find where I was triple filtered water, which really didn't hydrate me. So I decided to, relent on my coffee thing after a bit and just have a couple of coffees with milk. Oh boy, no, that's not good either. And the heavy cream was with the Carrageenan, what's it called, Richard? The thickener. Yeah, this was at meat stock. So the heavy cream there to put into coffee had this additive in to thicken it, which I couldn't believe was in there. So I actually have got 2 days of a reaction to dairy still coming out of me. So if I sound a little bit bunged up, that's the reason. Right. But it was great. The speakers were really good. And it was excellent. Weather was fantastic. And let's get on to the next question. Kevin Hemingway. And beautifully written, of course, with a name like that, it would have to be. What levers would need to be pulled if almost at target weight, but still wanting to drop the body fat further without losing muscle mass? Cue the expert. Go on, Richard. Go.
Brilliant question, Kevin. Look, it's protein is the key to everything, and this is why I think it should at least remain at a constant within an upper and lower limit. Now, the interesting thing is that protein will elicit an insulin response, which by default will or can cause fat storage. If you were to just eat fat, you're very unlikely to store fat because there's very little to no insulin response. But protein is essential. It's the foundation to everything that is in the human body. We need it to perform protein synthesis. So that isn't the lever that we pull. So what I would recommend, and this is purely short term, I would drop protein down to maintenance, which is around 0.5 grams per pound of body weight. And I would drop the fat down as little as you can. And allow the body to ramp up its endogenous ketone production from stored body fat. So basically, the body can utilize fat from dietary fat, or can utilize it from stored body fat. So by reducing the amount of dietary fat that we consume, we can ramp up body fat, or lipolysis, if you like, where the body will break down stored body fat and use that for fuel. I would recommend doing this a couple of days and then going back to a normal day, and then doing it again. It's something similar, which is protein sparing modified fasting, which is basically eating as much protein as you like, but from a lean source. This can yield similar responses, both of which are protocols that I use. I do find that fluctuating between higher fat days and lower fat days is incredibly beneficial, or at least maintenance days. So keep the protein roughly the same and drop the fat. This isn't advice in regards to optimal health, because I do believe the protein should be consumed with natural fats. The fats are critically important for healing and repairing and processing the amino acids, as well as our fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. So protein should be consumed with fat generally. But for aesthetic purposes, if you're willing to or wanting to break that resistance and move the body fat a little bit lower, those are the protocols and levers that I would pull. Now, when you explain this to someone, they instantly think that you're in a caloric deficit, and that's why you're losing the weight. And it's technically you are, but a calorie doesn't really exist in the context that we believe. But what we're doing simply is we are fat burners. If a carb person were to do this, then they would lose muscle mass, because they would force their body into a process of gluconeogenesis, which will use stored muscle mass. But you and I, this doesn't occur because we are fully fat and keto adapted. So when we do this, the body seamlessly flicks the switch from utilizing dietary fat into stored body fat, and this will allow us to ramp up this fat burning process, if you like, and we strip this body fat a little bit better. Nothing moves in a straight line, so you need to do this incrementally. So I would move a couple of percent and then go back to maintenance before trying to persevere again. For full disclosure, it probably took me 4 to 5 years to get to that condition, which in that picture was 3%. So I was competing around that time at 2%, but it did take me 4 to 5 years in order to get to that condition through a series of incremental changes. But yeah, it's as simple as this. But think of fasting. When you do a prolonged fast, you're not consuming anything at all. So there's nothing wrong with dropping fat and keeping protein, and you're maintaining your muscle mass because you're supplying the amino acids and the activation of mTOR, which is allowing you to do so, and you're just utilizing that fat tool if you like. So seamlessly flicking the switch, as I say, from dietary fat into stored body fat.
That is such a good answer. Now, you mentioned earlier something about a school group, and people might be wondering what we're talking about. So I'm just going to share the screen so you can see what our school group is about. If you like the way we answer questions, then you could join our school group. There is a link in the description. This is what it looks like. Let me hide that comment so you can see. And you just join like-minded people. It's really simple to do. And as you can see, this is like our community page where people just ask lots and lots of questions, and members will answer, or we will answer, depending on when you post it. And we've also got a classroom here. So the more active you are, the more courses you can go through. So you start with a free keto course. There's a tip. 19 tips to go in carnivore, level 2. Level 3 is thyroid. Then we have a dairy section. All of these have 3 ebooks, which you can keep forever. Popular videos to watch. We have fruit and veg at level 5. Level 6, all about protein. 7 is problem solving. And then level 8 is a copy of my book, How to Be Carnivore. And then there's a fat club. We might be updating that. I haven't been able to speak to Richard in the next couple of days. I might be looking at adding some other bits and pieces. And then we have a calendar. So, for instance, this is May the 28th. We did a live. We've got something at 7 p.m. on Thursday. And then next Sunday, sorry, that was recently. Sorry, here we go. Here we're down here. That's us now. Ask us anything. 8 p.m. we've got a question and answer session in our group. And then tomorrow night, even on a bank holiday Monday, we've got a live question and answer session. We sometimes do things on a Thursday. It's really simple to join. There is a link in the description. I think Richard might have put one in the chat. So that's what we do. That's what the school group is. So we'll just stop that. Here we go. Right. Let's go into the next question, which is from No Carb Bob, which is an excellent name. $4.99. I've been mostly carnivore for about 3 years. The last few blood draws showed my RBCs. That's just for people, that's red blood cells. 5.66, hemoglobin 16, and hematocrit at 49.6%. 74-year-old female. Now, all of those are okay. They're mild. So the red blood cells, that's mildly elevated. I mean, it's so close to being in range. I'm not overly bothered about that. Again, this is just information. It's not medical advice. It's not a doctor-patient relationship. The hemoglobin, the range is normally 120 to 160 grams per liter. So in deciliters, it's 12 to 16, and yours is 16. So that's fine. That's good. And the hematocrit, which is the percentage of blood volume made up of red blood cells, at 49.6. The normal range is 37 to 47. So it's actually mildly elevated. So it's possibly just down to a little bit of dehydration. That's what I would say. I would definitely have it maybe done again. Unless you're having some symptoms. If you're having a lot of headaches or dizziness or blurred vision, itchy skin. The thing is, this is just 3 readings. It's very difficult to say if you're flushing, because obviously more red blood cells, you're going to look a bit more red in the face. You could have a little bit of high blood pressure, which I doubt very much, because you're probably dehydrated. And normally high blood pressure, you're overhydrated. So yeah, if you've got swelling in your legs, I would definitely, have that looked at. But I personally, I don't, from the numbers, from what I've seen with past people that I've dealt with, I would not be overly worried about those numbers personally. Right. Hope that was helpful. No?
Could it be possible also? I mean, we know that the red blood cells live longer, when we are carnivore. Could it be possible that might be a contributing factor? And in fact, it's perfectly normal to see a slight elevation.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that is that is also a possibility. For people that don't know what that is, red blood cells tend to last longer when you're on carnivore, which is definitely proven. You could get a reticulocyte count, which would prove that is happening, and then you'd be even less worried. So, yeah, good point. It's good to have you back, because you've got my back, which is good. Oh, and talking of being back, Matthew said he would be back. And he is. Hello, Matthew. It's good to have you back, mate. Richard, did you have a chance to train with Dorian Yates? What did you learn from him about bodybuilding? What does Dorian think of the carnivore diet lifestyle?
Brilliant questions. No, I didn't train. I didn't train with Dorian. He was busy training the guys. I was. I still had lots of work to carry on with when I was in Spain. So my little bouts were back and forth for the talks and things. But yeah, I didn't really get a chance to speak to Dorian in detail in regards to his thoughts. But what I would say is that from speaking with Alan, he eats animal proteins and natural fats in the day with a little bit of animal proteins and white rice in the evening. So my interpretation of that is that he would be ketogenic. White rice, as we know, is lectin-free and probably one of the best sources of carbohydrate, at least one of the least damaging ones. So, it seems that he's well on board with Alan's way of thinking. Obviously, Alan is ketogenic and he thrives on glyco-feeds, glyco-refeeds. So he implements carbohydrates periodically once a week, and that works incredibly well for him. So my opinion is that that's what Dorian does. We'll have to get him on a call. So I'll speak to Al, and we'll get Dorian on a live maybe, and we can quiz him in regards to his diet. But being at the men's health retreat, and Alan obviously teaching that way of living, I'm pretty sure that he's well on board with that. But in regards to the weightlifting and bodybuilding, no, I didn't train. It clearly works. Being the mass monster, it's a similar training regime that Alan uses, and similar to the one that I used to use, when I was bodybuilding. Slight variances, but it's pretty similar.
Excellent. So Douglas here has Sorry?
Great to see Matthew back.
It is good to see Matthew back. Sorry, I'm being very businesslike, Richard. Sorry. Your question is above. Thank you for the super chat. I have got the question. This is a great one for Richard, actually. One needs to exit ketosis once every day by eating enough protein in one meal, according to Professor Barkay. Do you agree? I have gastroparesis and can't eat enough for a strong enough insulin response.
So look, I think when we look at things like this, I agree with Bob, and this comes back to what we've just mentioned, a few questions ago in regards to living a ketogenic lifestyle, consuming a bolus of protein, which will elicit that insulin response, which will lower ketones, not necessarily pull us from a ketogenic state, depending on what your perception and interpretation of a ketogenic state is. We often look at these things as on-off switches, and they're not. I don't believe them to be an on-off switch. I believe them to be, think of like a seesaw, if you like. When mTOR is elevated, AMPK comes down and vice versa, but they're both still activated. We don't switch one off. So it's not a case of just switching off ketone production. And in fact, with most people who live in a ketogenic lifestyle long-term, if you were to measure their ketones, which you've done recently, Steve, with your continuous blood glucose monitor and ketone readings, you would see an increase in blood glucose and ketones come down, but you were still producing ketones, constantly. So, I don't believe it's an on-off switch. I believe that we can become we can fall down the rabbit hole, and it can become incredibly overwhelming. Eat as nature intended. Don't overthink it. I don't believe that you need to test blood glucose or ketones for any reason, unless you are pursuing a certain outcome or you're looking for a specific, looking into a specific health reason. Let the body do its thing. And I do believe that, that you'll be fine. You don't need to chase these ketone numbers. My ketones are very low constantly because I'm heavily keto adapted, which basically means that my monocarboxylate transporters and enzymes that utilize the ketones have been upregulated to such a point that in any given time there are very, very low ketone levels in circulation. It doesn't mean that I'm not ketogenic, and it doesn't mean that I'm not producing ketones. It just means that I'm more efficient. And this is a cyclical thing that we see. We see an elevation of ketones in the early stages in regards to acetone release from breath and urine. This comes down, beta hydroxybutyrate in the blood increases, and then the longer you maintain the lifestyle, you see this come down as the body begins to utilize it more efficiently. And it doesn't mean that you're not doing something correctly, you're not doing anything wrong. But look, it's coming back to, you can't get a strong enough insulin response. How do you feel? Are you thriving on a ketogenic way of living? It's we quite often compare ourselves to numbers and other people. It's people ask me constantly. They send me bloods and they will say, "Look, my bloods are out of range." And I say, "Well, what is in range when we live this lifestyle? How are you feeling?" "Well, I feel fantastic." Well, we shouldn't be driven by the bloods. We often look at these numbers and we will begin to create problems that don't exist. I think bloods are fantastic. I think that testing is fantastic, but they're nothing more than a tool that we should utilize if there's a problem. If there's no problem, then there's no problem.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, a very simple question slipped through the net, and I'm sorry that I didn't address it earlier. Just to also explain that we do give full and frank answers. So if you posted your question at 7:15, you may not get your question answered, which is why we offer the super chat to push you up the queue, which helps the channel here to survive. And also, it shows your appreciation of what we're doing. So that's one thing I would say. So please be patient. Of course, as I say, we also go onto our school community because people like how we answer the questions and you want a bit more time. And we offer an hour and a half at least extra throughout every week of these live question and answers. Well, Sarah says, how did you guys meet? Now, how did we meet? I had a success story and I was doing it from my YouTube channel. And the guy who was very successful was Welsh. It wasn't Richard, by the way. It was somebody who mentioned Richard. And he said, "Oh, there's this brilliant nutritionist. You must have heard of him, Richard Smith, the Keto Pro." And I said, "No, that slipped my radar. That really has. He's gone under the radar. What's he like?" And this guy said, "Well, he talks a lot, but he knows his stuff. If you could stay awake for his answers, there's brilliant answers." So I contacted Richard. It was really that simple. And, for a long time, we didn't even meet face to face. And I had this harebrained scheme to do a 24-hour live stream, a carnivore one, the first one in the world. And I'd spoken to Richard, I think, once or twice, and I realized he was an absolute, font of information. I know I give him some stick for his long answers, but that's because he knows a lot. And it's, full of brilliant information. So I said, "Would you like to do a 24-hour live stream?" So no jokes about the fact he could do it on his own, because I do believe that. So it was the world's first carnivore 24-hour live stream, and we co-hosted it. I stood up for the entire time. Richard sat like that for the entire time. We didn't eat, we didn't drink. We just sat and answered questions. We had some brilliant guests on. So that's how we met online. And then I think we met face-to-face at the PHC conference, the Public Health Collaboration, which I want to plug again because it is this weekend. So you should get your tickets because it is brilliant. And so it sounds like Richard's going to be there as well as myself. And so we've met face-to-face a few times since then. And the reason I'm answering like that is because there is the next question from Matthew. Because one of the things we did together was the thing called the Carnivore Conference last year. And Matthew is asking, will there be a Carnivore Conference this year?
Brilliant question. The Carnivore Conference, which I co-organized with Ben Hunt and Sylvie Hall, which was a fantastic success. Huge success, I think. We did try to book it for July. We couldn't secure the booking because the venue was half booked out to another group. So the venue last time was done at Cliff College, which is it's a Christian church college, and they had like a group there basically. So we couldn't commandeer the full event. We are looking into another venue. So we hope so. Look, it was such a massive success that I want to make sure that we continue to do this. There will definitely be another Carnivore Conference without question. Whether it's this year, at the moment, I'm unsure. We were dead set on getting it done in July, but it's just not feasible. So we will see. But yeah, I will keep you updated, and there will certainly be another one. But whether it's this year or not, Matthew, I'm unsure.
Yeah, that's a shame. And that's the first I've heard that. So you could see genuine disappointment in my face. But there you go. Right. Deb Dickens says, can you mix electrolytes and creatine powder?
Yes, providing they're Keto Pro. No, yeah, of course you can. It's no for full disclosure. I create electrolytes. Obviously, Keto Pro is the brand of electrolytes that I create. I do believe them to be the best on the market anywhere in the world for a number of reasons. I won't bore you with why. The ratios are correct and what they should be, and they are perfectly fine to mix with creatine. That's how I consume my creatine. I'm back on creatine. I've had a couple of sessions in the gym. I don't know if you can see a bit of shape coming back. My shirt is bulging, which is fantastic. This was hanging off me a few weeks ago. I've literally had like 2 or 3 sessions back. So I'm back lifting some weights, and I'm back on the creatine, which is also fantastic for the brain. But yes, Deb, no problem at all. Mix your electrolytes with creatine.
Excellent. That's a really good question. And a really great answer, of course. Princess Alavera. Best book to give my doctor about the cholesterol myth. Thank you. Well, go on, Richard.
Best book. So you've got a number of books, haven't you, Stephen, in regards to bloods and things? It's look, I'll be honest. I don't read an awful lot of books. This may surprise a lot of people. I struggle to read. So it's this is why Steve reads the questions, because I can't talk and read at the same time. Which makes it difficult when it comes to studying. And last year I recorded over 750 hours of clinical study in CBD, points towards medical qualifications, which is super difficult. I work sort of 2 hours a day. But Steve has a number of books which he has written, which I can't recommend highly enough. There are some studies. One particularly by the BMJ, which is probably referenced in Steve's book, which covers over 68,000 participants and shows an inverse association representing 92% of the participants. That's published on the BMJ. That's probably the biggest one that I would recommend to anyone to show their doctor. But it's difficult. It's a difficult sell when it comes to explaining to your doctor that cholesterol is actually super beneficial and imperative for life. But Steve, you've got a book there. Which one is it?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the bigger books first. So I think one of the best books is The Clot Thickens by Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, but he also wrote a book, I think either called The Cholesterol Con or The Cholesterol Myth, one of those titles. And if you get Dr. Malcolm Kendrick on that, that's really good as well. I think they're about the best too. I wrote a book about statins, which is there. You get from my Stand store, you can get it on Amazon, and also included everything about cholesterol in my Guide to Blood Tests, which is about the blood testing in the context of keto, carnivore, and low carb, because the readings can be misread, which is interesting. So yes, that would be the best thing to do, by the way. So yeah, one of those books. I think Malcolm Kendrick's book is sort of humorous and good. I actually think my book's very good because it's a bit more plain English and there's a lot more graphs and pretty things and bigger print, which maybe the doctor would like, a bit more color. But anyway, right. And the reason I smiled is because Bruce's question is very similar. I'm type 1 diabetic and I've worn a CGM for a year. Recently, I've noticed a divergence between CGM, HbA1c and the blood tests. The last blood test being 32, 5.1%, and CGM saying 26, 4.5%, which just seems wrong. Any ideas? Yeah, absolutely. Any ideas? Because your CGM is actually looking at your interstitial fluids and then using a calculation to tell you your blood glucose. But you're doing it every single moment, which is good. I'm not saying that's bad, by the way. I'm just explaining it. You can also use capillary readings from your fingers to calibrate your own machine. So you could look at your CGM and think, right, I'm going to do some finger pricking just to make sure that what it's saying matches up with what's actually in my blood. And normally it's pretty close. All right, it's never going to be exactly perfect. The HbA1c is not a direct measurement. It is a measurement and a calculation, which then looks at an expected life of your red blood cells. Now, regardless of whether you're type 1, type 2, or you're not diabetic whatsoever, when you eat this way, it does seem that red blood cells seem to last longer. Now, if they last longer, it can give you an artificially high HbA1c, which doesn't marry up with your blood glucose, something we talk about ever such a lot. And it's in both those, it's in my blood test book, by the way, and also in my Substack. I talk about this a fair bit. I think I also talk about it on the thing I did with Bart K, which is out today on my birthday. So this is a common thing that comes up. So when I started as a phlebotomist, which was many, many years ago, I was told to watch out for artificially low HbA1c, because if you're hemolytic anemic, that means your red blood cells don't last as long as they should. It will give you a false reading, which is too low. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to think, well, if you're warned that it could be too low because the red blood cells are dying too soon, then it could be too high because they're living longer than expected. And that's what we find. So when you do a reticulocyte count, you can see the production of the red blood cells is actually slowing down, which just means the ones in play stay in your body longer, which is also one of the reasons why you have a difference in your ferritin levels, for instance, with this way of eating compared to other ways of eating, because 90% of the iron that your body uses is from the recycling of the hemoglobin in your red blood cells. It's not coming from the red meat. It is a bit, but many people think, well, this is a very high iron diet. But it isn't, actually. It's sufficient heme iron, and that's another thing. But anyway, hopefully that will help you, Bruce. So what you need to do personally, just to recap, is do your capillary reading and see if your CGM is matching up with your actual blood, and then trust that more than your HbA1c, because the HbA1c is a calculation. It's not it's not a direct measurement that works without that calculation. So yes, right, here we go to the next question. Nobody you know. I've been doing keto since January. I was 160 pounds, got to 138. Well done. I think I've hit a stall on losing fat. I want to lean a little bit more and still maintain muscle mass. Should I go to lean meats?
Yeah, brilliant question. Look, we covered something similar early on. Nothing moves in a straight line. You're always going to plateau. If you're ketogenic, there are other levers to pull. There are still compounds within the plant community that can cause stalling, and these in particular are lectins. Lectins will bind to insulin receptors and elicit a 5 times higher response. Lectins are found in high quantities in nuts and seeds, and also things like tomatoes and bell peppers and other vegetables, for example. So rather than switch to lean, my initial approach would be to drop the nuts and seeds, restrict things like tomatoes, bell peppers, cauliflower, look for things that are lower in lectins, try to remove the higher lectin compounds. This could include milk and cheese, for example. The cheese doesn't contain lectins, but they do contain animal lectins, but not the phytohemagglutinin that we get in plants. But the casein there can also be problematic. So there are far other levers to pull before we go adjusting the protein. So take a look at lectin high foods. I will pop a link into the description with a shopping list from my website, which should give you an idea of the compounds that contain higher amounts of lectins. This does need to be updated. There are a few updates that need to be done within this, but I've just posted that in there. So try to avoid or reduce the compounds that are higher in lectins. Nuts and seeds and bell peppers and tomatoes are going to be the worst. I do that before addressing any alterations towards consuming meat.
Excellent answer. It's so good to have you back. Right, let's have a look. The next
I've also, before we get onto that, Steve, I've also put into the chat, into the comments, a link to the study that we were talking about, which was the lack of association or inverse association between low-density lipoprotein cholesterol and mortality in elderly people. This was the 68,000 participants study. I put a link to the study in there along with the results and conclusions, so you can see those in the comments. That, I think, is the single biggest study which carries weight, which your doctor may pay attention to. There are lots of others, but that's the biggest one, I think.
Yeah. Do you have What's the title of that one? Can you remember?
That is, the title is Lack of an Association or Inverse Association between Low Density Lipoprotein Cholesterol and Mortality in the Elderly, a systematic review. So that was a cohort that covered 19 studies.
Yeah, and another one you could look up is lipid levels in patients hospitalized with coronary artery disease, an analysis of 136,905 hospitalizations in Get With the Guidelines. That is also, and it's a study I've only recently become aware of, which is just mind-blowing because it absolutely destroys the LDL hypotheses. These are real hospitalizations, real people, real levels being taken, and it does just a normal distribution curve as you would expect. So it shows that there's not more deaths at high levels, and there's not more deaths at low levels. You know, it's right in the, it's just basically average what happens at populations. You know, it's incredible. Anyway, right.
The Minnesota coronary artery experiment was another really big one, because this is super important. It we'll get into this on the next call, but that shows some incredible results, and they were hidden for many years because
for decades. Because they didn't tally up with the theory, so it was hidden from the public. So the LDL thing just is a rotten stench, really. Anyway, right, don't want to get into too much politics. This will be the last question, and then, like I say, hopefully you could join us at school. I will put a link in the chat. Bear with me. If you want to follow us over there, that would be great. So Visual Messiah, 28-year-old carnivore, 1 year, been loving it, but the last 2 months my folate levels have dropped very low to 2.0, making me folate anemic. It's awful. Any tips for keeping folate levels optimal? Right, okay. Now, this is phlebotomy talk, and it's nothing to do with people and health. You see, so if someone says you're folate anemic, you have to say, well, what is your clinical presentation? So do you have weakness? Do you have fatigue? Do you have bleeding gums? Do you look pale? Do you have shortness of breath? Are you irritable? Do you have lots of mood changes, lots of heart palpitations, headaches, swollen tongue? Because you can have a lower level of folate and be totally fine. And there's no clinical worries, because when I see lots of bloods, which I do, and if you want bloods interpreted, you can book me for a consultation, or you can book Richard to go through. A lot of time, the terminology, you're high, you're low, you're subclinical, T3 or whatever, isn't true, because the ranges are based on people eating 45 to 65% carbohydrates. Because we're so efficient with our nutrients, we sometimes need a lot less. So, for instance, we talked about heme iron. Well, if you eat non-heme iron, you need a lot more vitamin C. But when you're eating this way, you don't need lots of vitamin C, because you don't need the vitamin C to convert non-heme iron to heme iron via the vitamin C ferroreductase enzyme. So that would be my answer to you. If you're eating things like eggs and grass-fed beef, you're getting folate. So I would worry about symptoms rather than trying to bump that number up. But I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, look, it's a brilliant question. And look, it's, folate, as you say, is found in high quantities in egg yolks. I think it's around like 140, 150 micrograms. Beef liver, being one of the most nutrient dense, is close to like 300 micrograms. I think beef itself is pretty low, but that's per 100 grams. I think it's around 3 to 5. But again, we would eat considerably more than 100 micrograms. But what we need to remember with this is that many of us on a carnivore-based lifestyle consume lots of beef and lamb, which is fantastic. And we can obtain lots of folate via the diet from consuming eggs and beef liver and so on and so forth. But much of this is irrelevant if we can't process it correctly. And in order to understand this, we need to look at methylation and the 5 pathways or cycles involved with methylation, which is the folate cycle, the methionine cycle, the transsulfuration pathway, the BH4 cycle, and the urea cycle. We've mentioned this a number of times previously, but this this is dependent on a number of cofactors. It isn't just enough to consume folate or B9. If we're not consuming enough to allow the pathways to perform to the maximum capacity, then it's irrelevant of how much we're consuming. Now, the key factor to this is, sorry, I know we're out of time. Look, in short, B2 is the key to this. So eat organ meats. Just consume some beef liver, eat some organ meats. Once you increase the B2, the folate cycle would increase, and this will actually increase the speed of methylation, and it should help resolve any problems. We could get into this next time or in the school group if you like, but I'm a big contributor to organ meats.
Yeah, we've done the hour, and I just wanted to squeeze in this super chat from Homestead Howe, and that's a really nice message to end on. You two are legends. Some say to experiment with diets since we're all unique, but every species has an optimal diet. Why not us? Well, of course we do. It's the way we're supposed to be. Is there one ideal human diet, or do we each need to test and refine? Yes, there is. And it's got PS Keto Pro equal the best electrolytes. I wanted to get that in for you, Richard. We have overrun on YouTube. We will be over on the school group. The best human diet is animal products, of course. Simple as that. Cows eat grass. Lions eat meat. We eat meat. You don't have to have a balanced diet. I don't see cows going out and saying, I need some nuts and I need some leafy greens. I don't need to eat the rainbow. So, going to have to stop there and see everyone over at school.
And check out Homestead Howe and the work that they're doing. It's absolutely incredible.
Brilliant. Thank you, YouTubers. See you soon.